I'm Dilara Salahova, and this is the Sustain, Change, and Grow podcast, your source of knowledge and inspiration for sustainable habits. In today's episode, we will talk about forest bathing. Forest bathing? What is it? Is it like taking a real bath in the forest? You're probably asking yourself all these questions. And everything is much simpler. Forest bathing refers to walking in the forest and immersing yourself in this experience, as you would immerse in the water. Forest bathing is a therapy that has multiple benefits for physical and mental health that are also backed up by science. With today's guest, Olga Terebenina, we will discuss what forest bathing is, its benefits for human health, and the science behind this practice. We will also discuss how forest bathing helps people adopt a more sustainable lifestyle. Olga Terebenina is the director of the Forest Bathing Institute that she founded with her husband in 2018. Since then, they have led hundreds of woodland sessions for various audiences, from the general public to the UK National Health System and healthcare professionals. A scientific approach is a core value for the Forest Bathing Institute. The Institute already collaborates with several universities in the UK to confirm and expand Japanese findings of effects of forest bathing on human health. Olga's dream is to spread awareness about the benefits of nature, hoping to help the current ecological situation and improve health and well-being. Olga, a warm welcome to the Sustain, Change and Grow podcast. So, let us start from the basics. Can you please explain what the forest bathing is and when it started?
So, the forest bathing is a form of therapy where we spend time under the trees for the health and well being benefits. So, it's not something like a fast walk, it's actually mindful time in the forest. And it originated in Japan, where it actually we can't say how long ago this concept started because it was always in the culture in Japan and South Korea. Shinrin Yoku is known as this mindful stroll in the forest for health and well-being purposes. But as a therapy, it started to be used in the late part of the last century, where in South Korea and Japan they introduced it as part of health service and started taking people out in nature and even created centers around those countries where people can go into, get checked, like see how their health is. And then there will be prescribed a certain path for forest bathing or certain activity. And it's grown from there. Now we can see it all over the world.
Okay, so it certainly has come to the UK and has become part of it public health system, right? So because you're working with the national health system.
Yes, that's correct. We are part of social prescribing in Surrey County in the UK. So the idea is when you go to your GP and say you are diagnosed with a certain condition, we normally say there are some studies showing that forest bathing can help if you have, say, anxiety or stress or even depression. It can be part of the preventative but also part of your recovery journey. So, in case if you have certain conditions, the doctor will prescribe most likely a medication, a therapy, psychotherapy, and also can prescribe something like social green prescribing, such as our sessions, which are run in conjunction with charities. So, someone who goes to a GP can then hopefully boost their health and well-being and help improve their condition not only by the traditional methods but also by going to one of our sessions. And the beauty of it is currently in the NHS we have quite a bit of waiting if you need to have therapy. So it could be 6 to 12 months waiting period before you actually get helped. And recent, I can just give an example of how recently one of the people we had on the sessions, he or she went to GP, was diagnosed with depression, and could get onto one of our sessions within 4 days or even 3 days from that appointment with the GP. So, and she did feel better after the session. So we can say that it's definitely going into the health system here, and we hope to open it up in more counties all over the UK, and maybe spread it to other countries as well.
And so, just for the listeners, GP is the general practitioner, right?
It's the doctor, it's a general, yeah, your doctor, yeah.
Okay. And you started in the Surrey County is because you are there, or it's because it's considered as a part of the experiment within the UK?
Yeah, we just started in Surrey because we started our company in Surrey, and we were working with the local government and the local authorities and the local charities. Now we're in West Sussex, which is on the border with Surrey, and we're still working with the Surrey, but also with the West Sussex and other counties as well.
Okay. And so, what are the scientific evidence of these forest basin effects?
So there is actually quite a lot. So even if you go to Google forest bathing benefits, there is a lot of science. So we know that it can help boost the immune system. I think this is for me one of the most incredible um, results that you can get. We have natural killer cells in our system, which are part of our immune system. So when we go into the forest, forest bathing has been shown to help boost those numbers of NK cells, hence helping us fight off disease and help boost our immune system. Another thing that nature has, which is incredible, and I think it's something that maybe medicines or medications can't always provide. Nature, and especially forest bathing, can have a regulating effect. So what it means, say, if you have low blood pressure, you would normally be prescribed a medication that will help to boost, to increase your blood pressure, and vice versa. If you have high blood pressure, you will be prescribed medication to lower your blood pressure. But what nature does is that it regulates your blood pressure, whether it's high or low, to a normal level. And so it has also regulating factors on many other functions and systems within the body. So it works through the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So these are the part of automatic nervous system in our body, which regulates functions such as digestion, breathing, heart rate, and everything that helps us move around without even noticing it. And what nature does, it helps us move from sympathetic nervous system, which is more about, kicking in, like doing your job well, beating deadlines, fast pace, etc., into a more relaxed state, parasympathetic nervous system, where you can actually help your body heal and recover. And on top of it, that's the kind of the physiology part. There is a lot happening on the chemistry in the air, and we just did a study with the University of Sheffield here in the UK about mass spectrometry, analyzing the air in the woodland and the air in the walled garden and comparing the two. So I can always provide the link to that, but there is a lot of benefit from the chemistry in the air. In fact, Dr. Ching Li, who actually came up with the term forest bathing, he did an experiment where he put businessmen from the city in a room without any, views or anything like that, any nature in there, and pumped the room with the chemicals. It's a very expensive, a very beautiful blend of chemicals in the air that they get in Japan forests into the room, and he saw 50% increase in health benefits. So we say 50% of forest bathing actually comes from the chemistry in the air, hence we are really looking into the benefits of that. But also we get psychological benefits. So from our study with the University of Derby in 2019, and I can also link that paper, peer-reviewed paper, we found that there is also improvement in anxiety, rumination of thought, depression, better sense of connection to others and the world around, and also pro environmental behaviors. So there's not only physiological changes, but there's a lot of psychological benefits. So it's really fantastic. And the beauty of it is that you can't overdo it. And there are no side effects that we're aware of. And yeah, so it is really truly beautiful resource that we're trying to share with people.
Very interesting, very impressive. So, many questions. Some of them is more for clarification. So, something that you said about forest helping to move from the sympathetic to parasympathetic system to remove stress, anxiety, etc. This sounds very much like meditation. No? That's what the meditation aim is. Um, is it the same processes? Like how the two are related?
So, very interesting question. We actually, in our forest bathing guide training, we are very much inspired by the concept of mindfulness and mindfulness in nature. Hence, we have two modules in our training, and the first module is heavily based on mindfulness and mindfulness techniques that in module two you learn to apply in nature. We did the study with comparison of a meditation technique, mindfulness technique, and forest bathing technique. And there was a very interesting finding where it showed that, I mean, I've heard a lot of people who are starting to meditate that actually they either give up, they get frustrated, or it's very difficult for them to do it, just to sit there and like be silent, be still. But what happens in nature, because there is so much around in terms of nature that can take your worries away from the mind. You can focus, say, on a tree swaying in the wind. You can focus on the movement of the river. You can focus on the sounds. You're still using mindfulness techniques, but rather than sitting with yourself and maybe going and focusing on your thoughts, you're actually focusing on something external that in fact helps you bring more benefit from this mindfulness exercise, because you're actually focusing on something that is enjoyable, pleasurable. And of course there are some added benefits if you are in nature environment meditating, doing mindfulness exercises. There are added benefits of the chemistry in the air, biodiversity, and things that we get from visual stimuli, the sounds. They all have added therapeutic benefits. So I would say forest bathing is like mindfulness plus. There's so much on plus side, including chemistry in the air and other elements in nature. But it's heavily based on the idea that we slow down and take slower pace and really enjoy what we see and experience around ourselves.
Okay, so these are the 50% of the forest bathing effect that you mentioned, right? This is the part which is the, say, purely psychology, mindfulness, quietness, and the other 50% is like the chemical part that you mentioned.
I would say actually it's just 50% the chemical part as per what Dr. Ching Li says. But 50%, the other 50% is all other natural elements, because we have lots of benefits and there are lots of studies on the benefits of visual elements, sound, auditory elements, textures, smells, other smells, not just the chemistry, but just the sensory inputs that the smells produce, plus mindfulness. So mindfulness is not just on its own 50%. There are some other elements on top of that in nature gives us to produce this beneficial effect that contribute to those 50%. So there's 50% air chemistry and 50% everything else, nature plus mindfulness.
Okay, so basically, to get the non-chemistry part, you can probably go also to the seaside, no, to the fields, like any natural environment. Would that produce the same effect?
I would say not necessarily, because I would still say there is benefit, no doubt. I mean, if you go to the seaside, there is negative ions that can help reduce stress. We can, the smell that you get from the sea, there's something like metallic in the air. That smell is the negative ions that we can breathe in. And in athletes, for example, they've shown to improve their endurability and strength. So these are all good benefits, but something that natural environments such as forests produce, we can't really replicate. We even have been, we as like humans have been doing lots of visual exercises where we try to replicate nature on computers, like as models, and we still couldn't reach the same effect as we would in nature, because there are so many elements. Visual is just one of those that we can, quantify so far. Or, sounds, for example, how the sounds in the forest, they're so, there isn't a pattern to them. They are so random that your mind actually stops trying to catch a pattern and starts relaxing. That's why, for example, sound of rain is so relaxing, because you can't find a pattern. You're like, oh well, might as well give up. And all other things that like biodiversity brings you, when you see different birds, different animals, different plants, this kind of sense of joy and feeling maybe amazed um, and just humbled by the world around you, and that you are part of it. Or just having pleasure. This is one of the big things that we don't quantify as much, but it's very pleasurable to be in some very beautiful environment with lots of colors and textures. So yeah, I would say there are definitely benefits in being in any natural environment. And by all means, if you have seaside, please don't try to like go miles and miles away to just see a forest. Also make use of seaside, because in seaside there's definitely its own benefits, such as negative ions, which you wouldn't necessarily get in the forest unless there is stream or rain. So I would say do make use of your natural environment that you have available to you. But there are definitely some amazing benefits to being in a natural environment such as a forest, and especially ancient woodland, which I can talk about. That's a special category on its own, and that's why we're especially looking at the benefits of forests rather than the general natural environment.
Okay. And that was my next question. Is there a difference between different types of forests? Because we can think about evergreen forest, but we can also think of mixed forest. Which ones have the biggest effect, and do the effect differs?
Yeah, no, definitely there is difference. So it's not so much about what type of forest, though I'm sure there will be more evidence to suggest that certain types of forests produce certain types of chemicals. So we know that, for example, in Japan, they have lots of cedar wood and other evergreens. And we here in the UK, especially in the south, we have more deciduous trees. So the chemistry would be different for sure. And we know that, for example, delimonene, the chemical that we do find in plants like holly, it can have some potential health and well-being effects. And something in pine as well can help, can have certain properties, but it kind of needs a bit more exploration. That's what we're doing at the moment. But what I wanted to mention is that the age of the forest is actually quite important, and how intact it is. So we do try to find these pockets of ancient woodland, which we only have 2% left in this country. Hence, it's actually really important to protect it, because it takes 600 plus years for an ancient woodland to form. And once it's been messed with, you have to wait 600 years. So we definitely can't lose those forests, because not only do they have the amazing diversity of plants, but what Professor Simard found out is that there is wood wide web. We call it WWW of the forest, in those ancient woodlands, which connect trees together. So in a plantation, so plantation is something where we basically wipe out the area and just plant trees. You can see quite often they're like in rows. Quite often they're pine trees, because they'll be used for, their wood would be used for certain manufacturing purposes. But in an ancient woodland, it's all different diversity, different plants. There you can see pine, but it will also be deciduous, depending on where you are. Up north more pine trees, and down south more deciduous. But still, there will be a mix generally of different plants, and they keep communicating underneath in this root system of a fungal system. And so, if there is something like a threat, like maybe a bug or something that attacking a forest at a certain point, even miles away, the plants send by their roots, by this fungal network, the signal of danger, that basically if the forest has been untouched, this fungal system would be healthy and functioning, and the signal was spread all across the forest to all the trees on the other side of the forest. And that would mean that these trees would be prepared, and they'll be releasing chemicals in the air to ward off those pests, those disease. And while they're releasing those chemicals, these are the phytoncides that Dr. Ching Li talks about, that are the ones that help us boost our NK cells. So in a forest where you have this connection underneath the floor, the forest floor, you have the connectivity between the trees where they help support each other, and they help also support each other in terms of nutrients. And so it's a healthier forest, more resilient forest. The disease doesn't just wipe off the whole thing, which we see happening quite a lot, and Dr. Simard saw happening with lots of plantations. That's number one. But number two, it helps us boost our immune system better, because in this forest the trees communicate via chemicals, and they are more effective at producing chemicals to help themselves. But hey, as a side effect, we get the benefit of those phytoncides and beneficial chemicals that help us boost our health and well-being and immune system. So that's why we're really trying to make people aware of the benefit of the ancient woodland and how it's important to protect them.
Yes, absolutely. So, for clarification, you mentioned NK cells in the
Yes.
Dr. Lee study. What is this?
Yes, NK cells is natural killer cells. These are the cells that I talked about before when I talked about our immune system, and how certain chemicals in the air, especially phytoncides, they help boost the number of NK cells in our body, and help us boost our immune system, and make us more resilient to illnesses and disease.
Okay. And in case you know, I would be much interested in knowing how this study by Dr. Simmers measured the propagation of information web of the trees.
They put some trackers in plants, in trees, and they Professor Simard actually came up with a term mother tree, or we say parent tree. And like stronger trees in the forest, or bigger trees, healthier trees, they would look after the trees around them. So it could be their own saplings, but it also could be trees in the same species, or even in other species. So, for example, in a connected forest, evergreen trees would be supporting deciduous trees through winter and seasons where they can photosynthesize because they don't have any leaves. And in summer, the flow reverses of nutrients. And so the deciduous trees would be supporting evergreens to help them restock their stores of carbon during summer months, warmer months, where they have leaves and they can photosynthesize. So how they found it? Yes, they put the trackers in the root system, and they saw like in the plants, actually in the trees, and they saw how the nutrients, certain nutrients, nitrogen, I think they looked at, and carbon and sugars, and how they were transferring through one plant. Like they found one certain nutrients in one plant, and then they saw it moving through the root system, through this fungal system, to another plant somewhere. It could be even far away, depending on how well established the root system is. But it could be not just the immediate close proximity one, but they could then find it on the other end of the forest. So yes, this is how they really found it. And yeah, that's how the Wood Wide Web um, idea came into being.
Very interesting. Always a very clever nature.
I think it's incredible. We just don't know how incredible it is yet, and we are finding out every day. So I think it's that's why it's so exciting. Every day you learn something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned this interesting result of one of your studies that the forest basin helps to change people's environmental behavior. Can you talk a
Yes.
bit more about this?
Yes. So there are some measures that help us understand how pro-environmental people are. So there are a few indicators, and how they relate to their everyday life situations, or maybe how they think about the environment, whether they are taking any actions, such as even like recycling or non-recycling, helping out in their community in terms of pro-environmental actions. So there is kind of a whole category of things that we're looking at when we talking about pro-environmental behavior, and pro-environmental attitudes, in fact. And so it's interesting to note that in our studies we did look at that, and we were not maybe basing our whole research and emphasizing on that, but it's interesting to notice that in our research we did find that after the sessions people's pro-environmental behavior did grow, did increase. But I can also say from our sessions, so usually it's one of those studies that uh, I believe in University of Derby, Dr. Miles, he looked at how we are, what influences our pro-environmental behavior. And he looked at different factors such as a proximity to green spaces, or how often we go to these spaces, or how long we go into those spaces, and actually found that the main factor that contributed to how we have the pro-environmental behavior, how well established it is and developed, is our nature connection. So it's how connected we feel to nature. What's that feeling that gets us to go into nature? So it's more about quality rather than quantity, and that's what we saw in our sessions. We've met so many people who go on regular walks in the forest with their family or dogs. They stay on the phone, they chat with their friends, and that's it. It's kind of, everyone knows. I mean, it's one of those elephants in the room, right? That there is an environmental crisis currently, that we should do something about it. And yeah, everyone should do something about it. But then no one really, kind of, it's one of those things. You feel uncomfortable, you shift in your chair, and then, okay, well, I have to get on with my life. And you don't really do anything. But then if you do connect, like in our sessions, we see people suddenly like, that's what it means being part of nature. I can feel that it helped me, and that makes me want to, because now I feel connected, because now I feel that it can help me, and I feel a relationship with nature. Now it makes me more inclined to do something for nature, not because, well, sometimes it is because I understand that these are good environments for me, and I also want my children and my grandchildren, and all other people to benefit from that. But also you suddenly feel like it's not a stranger to you. You know this place, you can feel this place, you feel emotionally connected to it, and that makes you think like, gosh, I do want this place to be around. So it's like, I do want my friend or someone you really care about to be around. Hence you're gonna do something to help protect. And we had people like starting groups to help pick up rubbish, or starting some community projects, starting their own forest bathing sessions, and going on to do wonderful things just because they felt inspired, and maybe for the first time felt, since childhood, actually, funnily enough, when my children do feel connected, but since childhood, feeling truly connected to nature and wanting to care.
Have you measured somewhat longer term effect? Because part of maybe what you capture is that there is this inspiration and eagerness to act immediately because you were helped and you feel gratitude. But then, as the usual routine and habits take on, people may somewhat put it aside.
I think that's such a valid point, and I do believe we do have some reviews that we'll be doing in a couple of years to see where the people that we've tested are at. But currently, we just did some of the studies that looked at like 2 weeks post the event. We didn't have anything looking at like 2 years or 5 years, but that would definitely be in our radar. What I would just say is that we do encourage people to stay in touch and keep it regular, because even if you come once to a session, it can give you a boost. And actually, 1 2 hour session can give you a boost for a couple of weeks. 2 to 3 hour session of forest bathing. And so, to keep your immune system in a good place, it's recommended. So, you do forest bathing every 2 weeks or so if you can, and then supplement it with nature connection that you can do on a daily basis, such as, I don't know, go in a park, or if you have a garden, or just look at a tree outside your window, anything that's accessible to you. But I would really love to have, to look at how it, whether it leaves a mark for people further down, because I know that, yeah, as you said, it could be impactful in a moment, maybe even a few weeks afterwards, while the effect still lasts. But it's interesting to see, and that's one of the things for me to also, what I'm working on is how to make this a consistent change. And I personally do believe that it has to come from within. So it's not like someone can keep on feeding you, tablets, or feeding you advice. It does come from this sense of, hey, we're responsible adults, and we live on this planet called, Earth. It's our home, and we have to take care of ourselves, right? Our health. If you have families, you have to take care of your children or those who are dependent on you. And in the same way as you take care of your house, your family's health and well-being, you would take care of the earth. And and it starts all with the kind of mentality change, where maybe we have to say it's not anyone's fault out there. It's our responsibility to work on it together, and it starts with us, and look at ourselves and what we can do to make ourselves, our health and well-being better, as well as that of the planet.
Yes, totally agree. But then I always think very often people ignore their own health. So they know they should eat less sugar, they should do more exercising, they should do this and that, and they don't do it. Like how we can request people taking care of the nature if they can't really properly take care of themselves. Do you have any psychological studies or evidence of what the problem is there?
I actually don't have, unfortunately, the studies. That's maybe something that I will look into, but that's definitely an idea that I support, at least currently, that I feel that it's kind of the neglect in health could be, if no, I'm not saying a consequence, or vice versa, but it could be related to what's happening on the planet, because definitely here in the UK we have crisis of the NHS currently. And it's just getting overwhelmed. Of course, there's not enough funding as well on the other side, but it's also, I think, the mentality of people not always feel like they are the ones who should be taking care of themselves, and they are the ones who should be making sure that they're eating well, and taking care of their health, mental health, and physical health. There isn't much education, unfortunately, on that topic, so not many people even know they should be taking care of their mental, emotional health, even physical sometimes. But I feel if someone can't take care of themselves, if someone is unwell, how can we possibly expect them to take care of something bigger than them? First, we should help ourselves, right? Help ourselves, and that's why we promote a lot of mental health and emotional health and awareness, because really, if people can't take care of themselves, and forest bathing is just one of the ways you can take care of your health and well-being. So I would say, for someone who's unwell, or who's maybe has concerns about their health, I wouldn't say don't even think about environmental behavior. That comes once you have already dealt with your own problems. So just go to forest bathing and see how you feel after it. You don't have to think about how it would impact your pro environmental behavior. Just start helping yourself And actually, as a side effect, I do believe, again, I'll look into some studies. If I find something, I will share with you. But I do believe once we do take care of ourselves, we will just have more capacity to look around ourselves and say, hey, maybe I have a bit more energy and enthusiasm to then help others around me. Maybe it's just my community, my county, my country, my, like, you can go as big as you want, and there is no limit really to how big you want to go, but it all starts within and with ourselves, and taking responsibility for our health and well-being, and educating ourselves if need to be.
Right. And if somebody would like to go after listening to this podcast to do some forest bathing, what would be your recommendations how the person could do it by his or her own?
So yeah, if you don't have anyone in your area, I mean, you can always check groups. There are groups everywhere, all around the world now, doing forest bathing events. So you can always check them out in your area. But if you were to just do it on your own, start going to the forest. First, find an environment that's pleasant for you, and hopefully accessible in a way that you can come there maybe every week or every other week, and start just by using your senses. So we say always try to put your phone, on silent. We say don't worry about leaving your phone at home, because you need it for security. So you have to have phone, especially if you're going alone, for security reasons and safety. But do keep it on silent and kind of keep it safe, but don't look at it all the time. And then if you can just slow down whatever you're doing. If you're walking fast, maybe just reduce your pace a little bit, and you can reduce it more and more over time. You can then also, if it feels comfortable, for some people it doesn't, take a few deep breaths if it feels fine for you, and then just focus on your senses in a way. You don't have to think about it very technically, but just focus on whatever brings you joy via the senses as you are in the forest. So many of us are visual. We will look around the forest and we would see different plants, different birds, but maybe you're fascinated with a certain element, such as like the sound of the birds today is amazing, or maybe the wind is so nice and so warm on my skin, or maybe there's smell of new growth, new plants in the air. Just focus on that one thing that really brings you joy, and you can stay with it. Just kind of try to not worry too much about time. Just stay with one thing that brings you pleasure and joy, and then maybe move around and see what else you can discover. Have a bit of sense of this curiosity and openness to open a new thing for yourself, discover something new. And then, yes, regularity is quite important. So if you can do it regularly, even little things, even if you go in your own garden or a park, just kind of for a second, if you remember, I might just look around and see what interesting elements I can find, or maybe there is a sound that suddenly the birds come, and you want to just focus on that. Just kind of reminders to yourself whenever you go into nature. And the more you do it, I say, at first you start, it might be a bit unnatural, especially if you are not used to doing it. But the more you do it, the more hooked you become. And actually, it becomes so pleasurable. Sometimes you're just like, I just don't want to leave. I want to spend more time in the forest.
What is the advantage of doing it in a group and with a guide?
So, why we sometimes recommend doing it in a group is because especially if you are not very familiar with, slowing down or connecting with nature, and mindfulness, it could be quite hard. So, when you go to a mindfulness class or yoga class, this kind of slowing down to a pace where you actually feel relaxed and you can let go, it's kind of a skill. And if you are not very familiar with that, you might want to like go to a class to learn it. And the same with forest bathing, it is really a skill. I mean, it's not something magical, and there isn't anything extraordinary there, but it takes someone who is trained in mindfulness, in that mindful guiding, to take you to a certain place. If you haven't yet especially been there or tried to go there mindfully, it could be a challenge. So the guide can help you develop that technique of going into that mindful place. and feeling benefits of being in that place, mindful, safe place. So that's number one. Another one is that you are kept safe. So the guides, if they're properly trained, they would know to choose areas that are safe, and they will look out for your safety. So instead of, maybe some of us have sometimes anxiety of going into the forest, and we always recommend, if you are not sure about the area, make sure that you bring someone with you. But sometimes it's hard, if you are not sure that you are feeling safe and protected, to just let go. And if you know that there's someone there trained and certified and knows what they're doing, you can just let go and do whatever feels right. Yeah, of course, you are then guided, giving ideas of things you can do, how you can connect. So our guides, for example, are very in tune with the environment, and they'll say, "Oh, listen, listen, what can you hear?" Or like, "Smell the air in the air in this area." And the third thing I think is very important, and we actually did find in the study with the University of Derby, that the sense of community, and when people were connecting with each other during sharing circles, their heart rate variability was high. So heart rate variability is basically your indicator where you are in your parasympathetic nervous system. So basically how relaxed you are. And it was highest when people were hugging a tree and they were sharing in a sharing circle. So you're sharing your emotions. So it's a very much like part of the therapeutic benefit, because you can share how you feel. You can talk to people who maybe have similar issues going on. You can just feel that you're in a supportive environment, and you can also connect with people. We encourage people to connect and stay in touch, keep in groups, go to forests after that together, and you have this motivational group who of wonderful people who are like-minded. And yeah, that support really goes a long way. And I think one of the biggest things that I would say, if you are starting something, it's having someone support you, whether it's your family or friend or some stranger whom you trust and you meet in a group and you connected with, who becomes your forest bathing pal, and you go and do forest bathing with.
For how long should you experience in one time the forest basin to have a good effect? Like, can it be 10 minutes, or does it have to be 30 minutes or 1 hour?
So I believe that any time in nature can bring benefits. Physiologically, we see that how our nervous system reacts, and how like the effect on our immune system, natural killer cells. It starts happening after 2 hours of forest bathing. So I'm not saying you always, if you go for the forest, there's no like benefit at all if you go for 10 or minutes or half an hour. But there is a much more profound benefit if you go for 2 hours plus. But there is still some benefit when you go for smaller sessions. What I say, if you are going for smaller sessions, because let's be honest, 2 hours is a long time for most of us busy people. But if you are going for smaller amounts of time, and if you are not going to an ancient woodland, which would have more of those beautiful chemicals in the air that help us boost our health and well-being, I would say maybe make those sessions a bit more often. So maybe 5 minutes in the morning when you're going to work, just stop, look at a tree, or stop and listen to the birds singing in the morning. And then just before you return home, do the same thing. And maybe in the middle of the day, you can also fit something in your lunch break, just looking outside the window and seeing the trees. That counts, really. I mean, anything counts. So if you only have 5 minutes here and there, it's not a reason not to do it. You can still do it, but you would have to do it like more little sessions. But over time, it would still build up to a very good benefit for your health and well-being.
So I have a forest nearby, but this forest loses the leaves during the winter. Will the effect be the same?
So we say that there are seasonal changes in the benefits of forest bathing. So we know that, for example, in pine woods, there will be different benefits to deciduous forests because of that. There is constantly something, they're working through the leaves. But at the same time, even though we know that there's less oxygen produced by the forest, deciduous forest during winter, uh, and that's a big benefit, of course, of going to the forest, getting that oxygen boost. But at the same time, there are still many other benefits. It's not just about the oxygen or the chemicals in the air. There would still be chemicals in the air, maybe not produced only by the trees, by the plants, by the flowers, by even the soil produces chemicals that if we inhale, if they can help boost our immune system as well. And actually, even contact with earth and smelling those chemicals can help an amazing effect on your serotonin and dopamine levels, so kind of happiness hormones. So there is so much more on top of just oxygen, or even chemicals produced by the trees. That's 50% maybe, around that, but still there is 50% or even maybe more of other things that you can get from the forest. So I would say, don't worry about no leaves on the trees. You can still find lots of benefit. And I would say, if you do find a spot which you can visit throughout the year and have this sense of change, that really is therapeutic, because you can then maybe relate more to the change of things in your life, and kind of just observe how nature maybe goes from this luscious green in summer, spring, to like less of color and more, going within. And maybe you might want to also contemplate on that, and that can also have very therapeutic benefits.
So now we have very few minutes, and let's cover also your personal story. How did you become interested in the forest bathing? And what is your sustainable lifestyle and environmentally friendly behavior is a part of promoting the forest bathing?
So yeah, my story is that I was always connected with nature when I was living back in Russia, because it's a typical thing. You might know, Dilara said, we go to countryside houses during summer. We say babushka's house, and we spend most of the summer. Many of the kids, at least of my generation, will spend the whole summer in the countryside house, which would be on the doorstep of the forest. So that was my kind of childhood. But then I moved to Russia, though, from Russia to UK, and I started living in a city and having less connection with nature. And I saw that my mental health started declining. I started having anxiety and panic attacks, which then escalated into depression. And even after that, I started having some somatic symptoms. So they were very unusual, and no one could even know what they were and how to treat them. I just knew that my health was constantly, and my immune system, for example, was awful. And I just saw my health declining and declining and declining, to a point where I just felt that I have to do something about it. I mean, I've seen doctors and I was taking medication. I was all doing everything that I thought I needed, but at the same time, I felt I had to find another solution on top of it, because otherwise my health would just decline, and I'm not sure where I go with it. So I started with researching techniques and holistic health solutions, mindfulness. I've trained in Reiki, as we discussed, and yoga teacher training. And mindfulness meditation teacher training, I did that as well. So I was learning a lot about Ayurveda, ancient schools of thoughts. And in 2000 and well I've done 7 years ago, so yeah, it would be around 2017. We My husband and I, we met, and we he was very interested in ancient forests and ancient schools of thoughts, and we started looking at the benefits of nature together for health and well-being. And we started going, Gary actually started taking me to nature environments out of the city. I lived in central London at that point, and I started seeing things that I shocked me. I was sleeping for like 12 plus hours when I was taking out of the city, just because my body was recovering. And I didn't even know that I was, of course, unwell in terms of my mental health, but I didn't know that I was really unwell, that to the point that I would sleep for 12 plus hours. I wasn't like sleep deprived. And I saw my health started to improve, my mental health, like my anxiety started to slowly reduce, and I became more balanced. And that's when we started really researching and going deeper into, okay, so what science is there on health benefits of nature? And so that led us to coming up with the Forest Bathing Institute. We were really the first ones in the UK to bring something around, because I remember at the time we had the first article in the Guardian magazine here in 2017, and at that point there was nothing in the media about the forest bathing here in the UK. But now it's like, it's amazing, because you open the news and the magazines, and every day you see something about nature connection of forest bathing here in the UK, and there are so many organizations doing it now worldwide, and we hear from people in Thailand and other places all around the globe talking about it. And yeah, and it's really grew from that really a desire, need to help myself. And once I help myself, and that's where I always say, start with yourself. Don't, like, in a way, be selfish. You have to be selfish to actually help the planet, because if you are not, then it's not gonna be sustainable. So starting with the need to help myself, I found a solution that really was sustainable for me. It worked so well that I felt inspired, and I felt that it gave me so much energy and just passion to help spread the awareness to other people around me. And out of it grew the Forest Bathing Institute. And we're now working with the government in the UK, 40 universities all across the globe, and the NHS, and yeah, being featured in People Fixing the World on the BBC radio recently. And yeah, there's lots of awareness about what we're doing, and I hope we keep spreading it and working together as a community to help ourselves and the planet. But my pro-environmental behavior, I think it's a very, very big topic on its own. Maybe we can do another one on that. But it really, what I would like to say on it, it never starts, and I did try it before, but it never comes from a place where I feel I need to do something. Like, if I feel like, oh, I need to buy things in like non-plastic containers, or I need to find a place where I can refill my containers so I don't keep on buying things, something like this. It comes more out of curiosity and desire and interest, just because I feel, first of all, I feel full of energy, and I feel very well and inspired. And then out of this place of fulfillment and just like, what else can I try here to make a better impact? And I look around myself, I go into communities where I live, I find out where the farmers markets are, who are the owners of refill shops, how I can constantly, people send me something, how I can reduce my impact on the environment by looking at my electricity consumption, or like, how can I travel to, say, even France by trains, which we did, and it was lots of fun, rather than using like a flight. It comes from a, like, not a sense of shame or guilt, but rather, let me try this, I'll see if it works. And some things didn't stick that well, I have to say. There, like, I still struggle with shampoo bars. I'm really not a big fan. But it doesn't mean that you have to stop. Find something that works for you, but find it out of the place where you're like doing it for yourself and out of curiosity and with a positive attitude, rather than out of like total guilt for yourself, and that if you don't do it, you are not a good human being. I think that would be my advice to everyone who's starting on this journey.
Thank you. And what would be your two most inspiring books that you could recommend to the listeners?
So definitely Dr. Ching Li, his book on forest bathing, on Jinmin Yoku, it's incredible, because it's like really a guide to how to do forest bathing. That would be my first one. Second one, we'll probably have to think about it. There are so many that's like my eyes go. There's one on earthing actually that comes to my mind. Um, it's also been a big part of the forest bathing type that we're practicing. It's basically a very recent science of how what happens to our body when we have bare skin contact with earth. So there are a few peer-reviewed studies that are still in a bit of a controversial area, but I have myself practiced it, and many of our team members practice it regularly. So the idea is we do get positive charge from electrical equipment, computers, all the like TVs, everything was surrounded with, in constant contact with, and our bodies store this. And if you're wearing the shoes with sole rubber, rubber sole, it's an insulation level. So the idea is when we go in contact with the earth with our bare skin, it needs to be 2 points. So normally would say hands on the ground or feet on the ground. What happens is that the earth has a negative electrical charge, and it helps us release those positive electrical charge from this equipment into the earth. So that's why many of the equipment has to be grounded so that it actually doesn't blow up. And when we do store too much of the positive electrical charge, it can result in the health and well-being free radicals. You might have heard about it forming in our body and causing lots of things like it could be worse sleep, or more anxiety, or even causing some damage to our body. So this can definitely help. So if you want to try, it's bare feet on the ground for 15 plus minutes. And the book is called Earthing. I'm not sure whom it is by, but it's I can always send a link. It's very fascinating, and it just maybe helps us connect a bit more with nature and the earth around. And I think that's another element of how can you practically help yourself connect with earth, which I think many of us living in cities, in houses, in flats might do with.
Okay, thanks for the references. And really, 15 seconds answer. What gives you hope in face of all the environmental problems that we are facing?
Um, Really, I mean, I've worked with people for quite a long time now, and I can say I think, and I've come across lots of different people throughout my life. I think people are amazing. I haven't really, and I'm lucky, of course, but I haven't found a person whom I haven't considered amazing and incredible being. Maybe they're going through a difficult time. I know I was, and they need help, and that's all right. And if you are at that point, do help yourself. But I do believe strongly that we are such amazing beings that we are able to move mountains. We have reached so far in terms of even technology, that you and I can talk over this online platform and share our ideas. We have reached so far. So if we can gather together, gather our thoughts, gather our experience together as just species, I'm sure we can change things. It's just how we change things. So maybe we need to start with ourselves and changing our mindsets a bit first. But it definitely is, I think anything really is possible if we do put our minds together, because we are truly incredible beings. And I feel that there is more and more of this awareness of we can do it. And younger people getting inspired to get into action, like pro-environmental action. And the more we take care of ourselves, which I think there is a big boost, especially after COVID, in self-care and how we can take care and responsibility of ourselves, the more we're gonna be able to take care of others, including the planet. So I have total belief, and I think the only thing I would say, we have to stay connected to do it together. No one of us can one person do it on their own. We have to do it together. So if we do stay connected, please, yeah, do get in touch if you want to stay connected. And yeah, I would love to support any one of people around, and hope we'll get to support each other on the way.
I really enjoy this conversation with Olga. Personally, I do feel very much connected with nature. I feel necessity of being out in the nature regularly. I know that I owe my energy, good mood, and relaxing state to this connection. I notice how watching and admiring light going through the trees, animals doing their business, beauty of river flowing changes my state from concern to amazement and a great appreciation of life. I am extremely pleased to hear about scientific findings of this connection, and I hope that nature practices like forest bathing will help more people become aware of human nature connection and will reinforce this connection. That will also bring the needed change of more sustainable behavior in our society. For more information, you can check the website of the Forest Bathing Institute as well as links to published papers that Olga mentioned in the interview. As always, I am happy to hear from you if you have any questions or suggestions. You can write me at scgrowpodcast in one word at gmail.com. And stay tuned for the next episode. Bye bye!